Welcome, welcome. We will be starting shortly. Thank you for joining us. Mascagro, peace and blessings. Bonjour, bonsoir, bon après-midi, good morning, sabah al-khair, masa al-khair, assalamu alaikum. In all the languages that are coming to mind, please take a moment as we allow for people to join this webinar, share this video, tell us where you're tuning in from today, where you are joining us for this very timely and very important conversation. We will be starting very, very shortly. Thank you. As we begin and welcome people to join us here, thank you for tuning in. Today we are having a conversation that is at the nexus of gender, of trade, of investment, of development, of politics, of policy making in Africa, of collaboration, and how we build together. Please take a moment and tell us again where you are tuning in from. Tell your friends, invite your friends to join, tell a friend to tell a friend that this conversation is happening. Be prepared to ask more questions. And I will ask Simon to stop sharing the screen. And wonderful, thank you so, so much. Take a moment to thank you all for joining us, to thank our wonderful guests, our very distinguished speakers, some very powerful women, dynamic change makers. And I introduce myself to you. My name is Dima Mahmoud. I am Nubian from what is today called Sudan. And it is my responsibility and obligation as a Sudanese, as an African, and as a human being of conscience to let you know that there is currently a revolution happening in Sudan. It has been ongoing, and our women, our youth, our men, our elders are on the street demanding freedom and facing live ammunition. As we discuss this conversation about the role of the diaspora, about the role of women, about engaging women, about honoring women, about advancing Africa, keep in mind that Sudan is one of many, many, many across the continent and across the diaspora, people of African ancestry demanding justice, demanding peace, demanding freedom, demanding to be seen, demanding to be heard, demanding to be felt. So I urge you to keep eyes on Sudan. I urge you to keep your heart open for this conversation, because this isn't a conversation just about problems. We are here to build. We are here to find what has worked for these dynamic women and what wisdom they can share with us so that we can apply it. The idea for this discussion, this is part 2 of a discussion for those of you who have joined us for part 1 and are rejoining us for the continuation. Thank you very much. This conversation started based on an article that was issued by GRAIN, which is a partner organization to A Growing Culture. I am here wearing multiple hats. I represent A Growing Culture, which is a collective of activists providing support to grassroots movements around the world fighting for food sovereignty. I am also here representing EDFU Foundation, and it is a non-governmental organization with ECOSOC status at the United Nations, working collectively to merge and combine ancestral teachings to modern technologies for the collective healing of the trauma of all people of African ancestry. Through our ECOSOC status, we hold side events and conversations and dialogue and bring the grievances of our people from around the world to platforms like the UN. The message is that we belong everywhere. There is not one place that we as people of African ancestry belong. And equally, there is not one place that women don't belong. And this is at the heart of this conversation. I take a moment to thank our partners who have made this collaboration possible. So I thank Siatini Uganda, I thank GRAIN, I thank the Alliance of Food Sovereignty in Africa, Bilaterals Organization, Justiça Ambiental, Job for Change. If I have words, we will be putting the links in the chat very shortly. Before we start, as I said, this is a conversation that is delicate. This is a conversation that requires radical honesty and radical love. And we are so grateful that we have as much of the representation that we can. Unfortunately, we couldn't have someone from the southern part of Africa. But I will yield to these queens on the screens, and I will only go in order of what is on my screen for them to introduce themselves, introduce the capacity of which they will speak in, and any affiliated organization that they would like to shed light on. It will be just a brief 2-minute introduction to each, and then we will be having a family conversation. We keep hearing the presentations, the PowerPoints. This is not what, this is a family coming together to find solutions, to learn from each other, and to build. I am here to learn first and foremost, so I will be asking the questions, and I look forward to learning from each and every one of you. So I yield, I start with Madame Fatoumata Soumaré. If you would please take the floor and introduce yourself. Thank you so much for joining us.
Il faudra remettre le son, Madame Fatoumata. Le son, s'il vous plaît. Votre son, est-ce que vous pouvez remettre le micro en marche? Votre micro sur l'ordinateur.
Okay, until the tech gremlins decide to work with us, we will persevere. I will yield to Samia Melki joining us from the beautiful Tunisia.
Maybe Fatoumata is back now. Let's see what. Fatoumata, le son là, sur votre. Est-ce que vous pouvez le remettre? Le bouton rouge, vous appuyez juste sur le truc à gauche de votre écran. Le son. Voilà. Sorry.
Donc, je suis Fatoumata Soumaré. Je vis à Thiès, dans une région du Sénégal. Donc, je suis animatrice, formatrice dans l'agroécologie et la transformation des fruits.
Okay. Donc, shall I start, Zima? Yeah, this is Samia Mel Kifesi from Tunisia, North Africa. And I'm the president of a women rights organization. I'm also, this organization is also a member of SWOR, which is the Alliance Solidarity of African Women Organizations that has been created to push for the ratification, domestication, popularization of the Maputo, the optional protocol, better known as the Maputo Protocol, which is a protocol designed by Africans for African women. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, we have Faith.
Thank you very much, Dima, and the organizers for inviting me to this very interesting conversation. I'm Faith Lumonia, and I am a development economist, but I also work with Akina Mama Africa under the Economic Justice and Climate Action Program. Akina Mama Africa is a Pan-African feminist organization, and we basically do work around women's political leadership, women's sexual reproductive health and rights, and economic justice and climate action. And we center the voices and lived experiences of African women within policy processes, and we emphasize that it's important for us to look at, but also seek to address the structural and systemic causes of oppression against women. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I will also add that hopefully a little later on in the conversation, Merja will be joining us from Benin. She is the mother of the Ja family in Benin and has a wonderful initiative called, well, she wears multiple hats, as all African women do, or women really, but particularly African women. So I hope she will be able to join us later. I'd like us to start by just laying the foundation of why this conversation is needed. There is an increase for this need for development, for investment, for development, for calling for investment in Africa. There is this call for the Africa we want, whether it's by the African Union or by diasporans, but there is a particular deliberate effort by African governments calling on the African diaspora to invest in Africa. And as a young African, and I say young, and if mom who are watching, I'm still young. I have to ask myself, what kind of investment and what am I investing in? If within one small family of 5 members of people, we can't all agree on one thing, how can the whole continent want one thing? Is all investment good? Does development mean the same thing for all people, for all aspects of society? And for me specifically as a woman, my question is, where are we as women in this process? So I would like to start the conversation first and foremost with, where are women in these conversations? What are some of the challenges, let's say, in the intentionality of policymaking that is designed to eliminate women out of the decision-making process? How, in your personal experience, have you seen this impact women? Have you seen women try to change it, succeed in changing it, and in what capacities? I would start with Samia. Samia, there's the dynamic of Tunisia and North Africa, of Tunisia being African, of Tunisia being Arab, of Tunisia being
Mediterranean.
You know, the never-ending titles of that come with North Africa. And at the heart of what they call the Arab Spring, I personally don't call it a spring. I have not seen one flower. The only blossom that I can refer to is in fact in Tunisia, and it is because of what I am witnessing as in the role of women. So I'd like to start with you to just help lay the foundation to that.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, you know that we are among the Arab Spring countries, like you just said, the country that fared the best, relatively, you know. For Tunisia, it was actually a spring at the beginning, you know. I remember I was asked in Sweden one time at the Olof Palme Institute to speak about what have women reaped from the fruits of the revolution. And women who were at the forefront asking for their rights, that were, we have a very vibrant civil society in Tunisia before the revolution, militants who have been subjected to torture, to jail, punishment, etc. But after the revolution, they were just put aside. They had to, we only heard the voice of the men who were in the opposition before, or of the Conservative Party that came back from abroad and took the power. Why I say it's an Arab Spring for Tunisia at the beginning? Because for example, the CEDAW Convention, all the reservations were lifted in 2012 after the revolution. At that moment, maybe it's a question of circumstances and timing. The Conservative Party, who wanted to people to see it as a modern party, couldn't say no to the lifting of the reservation. So they were in a very awkward situation. And now they boast, they say, okay, look, you are saying that we are conservative and Islamists and everything, but look, when did we lift? When did we put complete equality in the constitutions? It's after the revolution, when the conservatives were in power and were in the parliament. So at least we reaped that. But why Tunisia has fared better in, concerning women's rights is because as early as the 50s, we had a code of personal status that gave women the right to divorce, gave women the right to go to school and to work, and abolished polygamy. And when afterwards, when we talk about development, when there were talks about development and everything, many, how do you say it, civil society activists and researchers said that if we could just pinpoint one reason of the fact that we were able to control demographic increase, etc., it is the fact that polygamy was abolished. You know, because when we see our neighboring countries like Egypt, for example, keep your husband, in order to keep your husband so he doesn't go and get another wife, you have to tie his hands with a lot of children. You know, so in Tunisia we did not have that security that women feel when they don't have to fear that their husband might have other wives, made women go out and work. And of course, instruction also and education was very important in that, because when you go out to work, you don't have time to have children, So I was just saying this. Maybe I'm a little bit now. Let me say also that what we and there were calls in Tunisia for foreign investment and from diaspora just after the revolution. Look, this is a country now, we're free, we have democracy, and there is no more corruption as before. So bring your money and come and invest. And but what happened is that because we found out that for democracy to be sustainable, the economy has to be robust and strong. And our democracy was faltering in Tunisia because of the same, because the economic situation was very weak, because the purchasing power was very weak, has gone down. And this is why people, I mean, the general public and the lay person would say, no, I don't want democracy anymore. This democracy has made the prices rocket, So, I don't need democracy. Let's go back to where we were, and we had enough food on our tables. So I think democracy and economic prosperity go hand in hand, especially in the first, our democracy is in its infancy. And now there was a coup. There has been a coup lately. I don't want to go very far from our subject, but just to give you the big picture, there has been a constitutional coup where the president interpreted the law in a way that the constitution that gives him all the powers now. He says it's just for a moment until there is a cleansing of corruption in the country. Now let's go back to women. What have women reaped from the fruits of the revolution? Not a lot. I was just listening, today was the 21st anniversary of the resolution 1325. And there were some activists who were talking about women in the informal sector. Most of women work is in the informal sector, and how women yearly, they die in the roads. When we say informal sector, in Tunisia, it's the agricultural sector more than anything else. So they die in the roads because there is no adequate and safe transport. They are in lorries, and you see scattered bodies in the road at least 3 times, 4 times a year, and they have tried to, the Ministry of Women has tried to remedy, to find solutions. There were laws, but the problem is the implementation of laws. And when corruption is really impermeating all the aspects of life, then corruption is stronger than any law or anything. So women are still being subjected to violence, domestic violence. We have a beautiful law, Law 58, that is, a very comprehensive law to fight violence. Yet we don't have the means to have all the instruments of protection, of prevention, of follow-up, or ensuring that there is the adequate counseling for women, psychological counseling, etc. And you see that the law has been voted in 2018 and 17, yet now in the whole country, we just have 2 shelters, for 2 shelters for women who are subjected. There have been training, etc. But we believe, we are a group of activists in Tunisia, Hadirat, with other people who work on this, on Resolution 1325, because we believe that if the problem of violence against women is not solved, then there will not be enough women in the positions of decision making. There will not be enough women to ask for their rights. There will not be enough women in the workplace. That means we think that the theme of and the problem and the issue of violence against women should be cross-cutting at all the other issues and all the other subjects, because violence is what hinders. There is domestic violence, there is economic violence in the agricultural sector. For instance, women get paid half what men get paid, and they work more. They go to the mountains. The men work at the down, and the women have to escalate the mountains to bring. And like I said, they are also they work in very, very, very disastrous condition. Dima, please orient me a little bit if I've gone astray to many other problems.
The thing is, they're all connected. All these points are.
Yes. What I wanted to say, I take this up.
Related with one another, but this laid a general enough base for us to delve in. We will definitely be going deeper into the solutions and how we move forward from these, because as we said, there are definitely strides to be celebrated, and if there's one thing we tend to not do enough of is really celebrate these milestones. So I would like to take this journey and take all of us here into West Africa and to Senegal to listen to some of the experiences of, again, the intentionality of the elimination of women in policy making. The article that we referred to that really inspired this whole series, that was written by Grain, and it's in the chat box, was specifically about how the free trade area agreement is the continental free trade area agreement is impacting women particularly. So what are some of the policies that you are seeing, Madame Fatoumata, and please share your experience as well as means or ways you have seen to counteract that.
Donc là, ici au Sénégal, en ce qui concerne les femmes, donc nous, on a beaucoup travaillé avec des ONG pour valoriser les activités des femmes. C'est dans ce domaine que je devais intervenir, je pense bien. Donc, vu mon expérience en travaillant avec beaucoup d'ONG, comme telle que la SAFODEP, Association sénégalaise d'appui pour le développement à la base, sur la protection de l'environnement et l'encadrement des groupements féminins épaulés par certains de leurs fils sur l'agroécologie et la transformation des produits locaux. Donc, c'est de 2000 à 2013 que j'ai travaillé avec cette ONG dénommée ASAFODEP, Association sénégalaise d'appui pour le développement à la base. Ensuite, j'ai travaillé avec, en 2007 avec Performance Afrique. Là, j'ai reçu une formation sur les techniques de séchage de bananes et de mangue. Toujours dans le sens de valoriser les produits locaux de nos pays pour que les femmes puissent s'en sortir. Donc, de 2012, en 2012 aussi, j'ai reçu une formation sur avec l'ITA, l'Institut technologique alimentaire, sur la transformation des fruits et légumes. De 2014 à 2017, avec l'ONG des villageois de Ndem, j'ai encadré des groupements féminins dans 2 parcelles, dans 2 périmètres maraîchers, sur l'agroécologie et la transformation des cultures locaux. Ce qui leur a permis de préparer leurs propres semences, leurs fertilisants et des pesticides naturels. Ce qui leur a permis de produire, manger sainement et de commercialiser leurs produits locaux. Donc, en grosso modo, c'est toujours dans le cadre d'encadrer les femmes pour leur donner plus de puissance. Donc, de 2018 à 2021, je me suis beaucoup investie dans l'encadrement des renforcements de capacité avec une ONG dénommée Performance Afrique en collaboration avec 3FPT, qui sont des institutions de l'État, toujours pour encadrer les femmes et les jeunes en milieu rural et semi-urbain. En dehors de ces activités, je gère une parcelle dans une école primaire. Donc, toutes ces activités nous mènent à l'autonomie semencière et à la souveraineté alimentaire. Donc, vu toutes ces activités que nous menons, il y a certainement des difficultés, surtout pour les femmes. Ici, en Afrique, plus particulièrement au Sénégal, l'accès à la terre est un grand problème, un problème majeur. Il y a aussi l'eau, les semences. En ce qui concerne les parcelles non clôturées, il y a la divulgation des animaux, la divulgation animale. Donc, c'est un grand problème. Les femmes battent corps et âme pour trouver quelque chose pour leur famille. Mais des fois, il y a les animaux qui viennent, qui dévastent les parcelles. Ça, c'est un grand problème au Sénégal. Donc, pour ce qui est de la transformation aussi, nous avons d'énormes difficultés. Il y a le manque d'outillage approprié. Il y a aussi la concurrence des produits de l'agriculture conventionnelle. Ce qui pose d'énormes problèmes aux femmes. Parce que comme nous produisons nous transformons les produits locaux, malheureusement, il y a les produits conventionnels de l'agriculture qui viennent succomber le marché. Donc, nous n'arrivons pas à gagner comme il le faut, ce qui est un grand problème pour les femmes surtout. Il y a aussi le manque d'emballage, d'étiquetage. Aussi, il y a les lenteurs administratives des agents du ministère de la Commerce. Pour bien vendre nos produits, il nous faut les freins, les labellages. Tout ça, ce sont les problèmes que nous rencontrons, nous les femmes d'Afrique. Donc ça, ce sont des grands problèmes. Mais malgré toutes ces difficultés, nous n'avons pas baissé les bras. Nous n'avons pas cessé de fonctionner en fabriquant nos engrais, nos pesticides naturels, le paillage, binage pour économiser l'eau. Donc, l'embocagement, mettre des vivres en plantant des moringas. Tout cela pour valoriser les activités des femmes, mettre les femmes en avant. Parce que ici, pratiquement au Sénégal, en Afrique, ce sont les femmes qui gèrent beaucoup sur les ménages. Donc, si une femme, comme par exemple, on peut dire, un homme à sa parcelle, sa production, il met généralement ses revenus dans sa poche pour aller voir d'autres femmes, prendre 2 époux, 3. Et la femme reste, avec le peu qu'on gagne, c'est elle qui s'occupe des enfants, qui ajoute pour la forme, pour préparer une bonne nourriture pour la famille. Donc, ici, c'est une grande famille au Sénégal, pratiquement. Nous vivons en grande famille. C'est très rare qu'on voit une petite famille de 4 à 5. C'est là qu'on peut dire que c'est une petite famille. Mais en général, il y a le papa, les grands-pères, les tantes, toute une famille. Donc, tout se repose sur les femmes. Donc, pour les femmes, sont trop fatiguées. Mais néanmoins, on lutte toujours pour s'en sortir. Donc, c'est toujours, il faut mettre les femmes en avant pour pouvoir mettre leur expertise en exergue. Donc, je pense que je vous attends pour des questions ou bien si vous voulez qu'on ajoute quelque chose de plus.
Thank you so much. Yes, we will be making more connections. I definitely have more questions. One thing that is coming up very strongly is, again, the deliberate categorization of women's labor, women's effort as informal, and the many layers that that go into that. This is something that we've heard Samia speak about, and now yourself, and I'm sure we have so many different connections. I know my personal experience in Sudan, and this is something we are currently continuing to fight, about all the celebration about Sudanese women and calling us the Kandakat. Kandaka is the Nubian word for warrior queen, queen sister, queen mother, but it is an honorary title for the resilience of women, which has, you know, has been taken on by women of Sudan today to call on this ancestral power. But when it was time for negotiations, when it was time for these agreements to come together to say, how will this country move forward now that we have toppled a 30-year-long dictatorship? 2 women were brought into the negotiations tables. And then when finally the agreements were happening and they're dividing up that power, that facade of a power sharing agreement, and I am speaking on a personal capacity here, 40% representation. Why 40%? If all you had said throughout the revolution since its beginning is that women are leading this revolution, it was a picture of a Sudanese woman on a car taken by a Sudanese woman, tweeted out by a Sudanese woman, that made this revolution catch the attention because there was this iconic image. And we are going to sit and say 40%. There's something that goes deeper into saying your work is no more than informal. And from the economic aspect, I would love to bring in Sister Faith to share some of these intricacies of, you know, what is lying under that? What is that really about? Please, I yield to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dima. And I would like to appreciate the previous speakers because they have brought out some of the issues, a number of the issues, and I'm only going to add to that, probably even basically reiterate. So I think for me, to try and answer your question, what is the issue, is to say that because as women rights activists, one of the struggles that we have committed our lives to is to challenge patriarchy, because we know that patriarchy is a system of male authority, which exists to basically legitimize the oppression of women through political, through social, through economic, through legal, through cultural, through religious and military institutions. And we've seen how a number of institutions work to legitimize this kind of oppression against women, many of which are actually led by men. But we also know that patriarchy varies in time and space, meaning that it changes over time and varies according to class, according to race, according to ethnic, to religious, but also global imperial relationships and structures. And so when we talk about challenging patriarchy, we are really talking about challenging systems of oppression. But again, for us to be able to effectively challenge it, we must be able to acknowledge and also be able to challenge other systems, because we know that there are systems that have continued to oppress and exploit women, systems like capitalism, like colonialism and neocolonialism, systems like neoliberalism, imperialism. And so it's important for us to situate oppressions against women within this particular context. When you think about economic oppressions and the fact that, for example, within certain countries, within certain regions, women still do not have the rights of control, ownership over land. It's because of a system that has allowed it to happen in that way. You find cases where women are doing the same amount of work as men are, but they're earning much less than the men are earning. We see that even when it comes to, for instance, access to capital for women who are seeking to be entrepreneurs, that accessing capital has also been tied to, for instance, being able to present high value collateral, which when you think about, again, for instance, the system and the fact that women do not have the right of access and control over certain resources, that then they would automatically not be able to access this financing that they would need. We also know how the system has been structured in a way that the burden of care work falls largely on women. And so because of that, women constantly struggle with being with the fact that they are time constrained. And so even when it comes to, for instance, old age benefits, because this again has been tied to how much money you have been earning over your work life. And so if you have been working but not been earning, or you have not been working and earning within a formal space, then that means the amount of money you will have when you're much older is much less. And so you will struggle when it comes to, for instance, access to health, access to food, and all those others. So it's really a system. And so for us to be able to liberate women, fully liberate women, we must be able to acknowledge these systems and therefore be able to acknowledge them, to address them. And just to speak, for instance, to the issue around remittances and diaspora financing, one of the things that we can all acknowledge, if you are if you're an African, you probably have a relative who, and most likely this is a woman, who had to leave the country and go abroad to be able to raise financing to support her family, either in terms of being able to raise money that would take her children to school or basically sustain their livelihood. But also we are familiar with perhaps a male relative or a male friend who had to leave the country to go and, like we always say, to go try and find greener pastures, because I mean, when it comes to, for instance, payback in terms of labor, it's much higher out there. And out there, I mean, in Europe, I mean, in the US, etc., etc. But when you look at the experience of both of these parties, you realize that, again, the income earned by a woman has always been spent on care work. So the remittances that come in, that are sent in by African women, are often financing to be able to sustain livelihood. So they are micro level investments, as opposed to men who, because they do not necessarily carry the care burden, are able to invest in higher value investments. And so all those different dynamics have been presented within our context. And it's very important for us to think about them, even when we think about how do we then better tap into this particular financing opportunity. The other dynamic that presents itself is the fact that we all acknowledge that diaspora financing is very critical. But I think one of the other gaps or challenges that we experience is the fact that, again, our governments have not embraced this kind of financing to be able to support or finance specific social sectors. Because, again, because of the way the system has been designed, and also because of our histories and the influence of the idea of white supremacy, we've seen that increasingly our governments tend to embrace white private financing, as opposed to embracing and finding ways of how we can be able to tap into our own financing. And so we've seen that most of the investments that are happening by some of the African diasporans have gone to, for example, sectors like real estate. And this is also because of the nature of our policy environment that basically presents a situation of mistrust, but also of the fact that, again, because they are unregulated, the idea of and the fact that as an African diaspora, and I can be able to invest and know that my people will be able to benefit, but that also I'll be able to benefit, then presents a whole different and challenging dynamic. So we've seen that investment, for example, in the health sector, in the education sector has been more limited, and most of the investment really goes into real estate. And again, when it comes to real estate, because of the dynamics that surround, for instance, access to land, control of land, again, women have been left out of this, because in certain countries, for instance, for you to be able, as a woman, for you to be able to purchase land and register it as your own and be able to do a certain kind of investment on it, there are demands, for instance, that you need to bring a male relative or your husband to be able to sign this particular transaction and ownership with you. Countries like Zambia are facing women are facing such scenarios. So it even limits the extent to which an African woman within the diaspora can be able to invest, whether for herself or for her mother or for her sister, without necessarily having to be tied to a male relative. Yeah, so I think I will stop at that point. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, what we are seeing is all the different ugly shades of violence against women. It is physical violence. It is economic violence. It is social violence. It is psychological abuse, because I was just, and just to also clarify that when we say Africa and her diaspora, and it pains me to have to, within the division, have to divide to clarify the difference, that the diaspora is not just the continental diaspora that is abroad. They are the descendants of our ancestors who have been kidnapped off our continent as well. And for how they have integrated into the different, wherever they have, they now find themselves in the world, there is still a yearning, a calling from their root to find a way to connect, to return to Africa, perhaps not to all of them, and that is something to be acknowledged, but there are a lot who are looking to connect. There are a lot who are saying it is time to invest in ourselves, in our kin, in our families, despite not knowing exactly where these families are or being able to connect or trace. But that is something that I have personally been seeing and really asking myself, when these governments call on diasporic celebrities and dangle the citizenships to them, hey, come, we'll give you the citizenship. You will be treated as a first-class African citizen. But are you treating all the citizens in your country already as first-class citizens before you can, like, on what basis are you saying, if you come to Africa, you will be treated as a first-class citizen? Are you explaining to these diasporans who have never set foot on the continent what that means and what rights you are accessing, especially if you are, like, I think, for example, when, Beyonce coming to the continent and, considering citizenship or all of that, if she were to know how women are truly treated in whatever country is offering this citizenship, would she still want this citizenship vis-a-vis a US citizenship? Vis-a-vis, these are questions we really have to ask when we are seeing our own governments, and I refuse to call them leaders because, as far as I'm concerned, we have no African leaders on the continent. We may have national leaders. When I say there are no African leaders, the first thing that is always thrown in my face, what? But you have Rwanda. No, the Rwandan president is a Rwandan president. He's a Rwandan leader. He's not an African leader. If you are not actively working for the advancement of all Africans on the continent and in the diaspora, you are not an African leader. If your work, whatever your work is not contributing to the upliftment of all Africans on the continent and the diaspora, you cannot call yourself an African leader. You shouldn't call yourself an African leader. This is how I personally see it. But we sit here and we look at our government saying, hey, come, build your solar city in Senegal. And you will have all these great opportunities for employment for the youth. But at what cost? Will all the youth in Senegal be able to afford living in this city? For the massive space you will take to build this monstrous bubble, how many people are you displacing? How many women are you kicking out of their places? How are you not seeing that you are creating a bubble within a bubble within a bubble? This is what I mean when I ask, what's the gentrifying cost? Because here I'm tuning in and I'm calling from Maryland from Turtle Island, what is known as the US. I am on stolen land. Yet our misleaders across the continent will look at the leadership of this land, of this country, as an example for human rights. What example? They have not even acknowledged the genocide that they have committed to establish their land, but somehow they are the idol, they are the model to be replicated. But let's look at the models that are really happening. I live about 40 minutes from Washington, DC. Originally, or known as, I don't know what it was originally called, I'm still learning, but it is known as Chocolate City. There are entire areas in Washington, DC that native people, or let's say people who have lived in Washington, DC, can no longer recognize, can no longer afford living in, have had to leave and sell everything and leave it behind and move because everything is expensive, because all of this investment for development to make DC, this great cap. And we're not seeing that the same thing is happening on the continent. We have young Africans who have gone abroad, who have studied. I have come to the US to study. But I'm returning, and I'm returning fully aware of, okay, things need to be done differently. I'm not expecting the comfort that I had apparently experienced or have told myself that I am experiencing abroad, because this comfort comes with a cost. Now, to bring this comfort to my country or my village specifically, which just got electricity 2 years ago. I am from Kabaja, which is a Nubian village in northern Sudan. We just got electricity 2 years ago. The members of my family in this village built, the women alongside the men, built the clinic. They pay the doctor to come and stay because the government will not pay. Because the government will not provide. But I'm supposed to come in with my ideas of, oh, it's so easy, I can just do this, I can bring this organization and they will fund here and they will fund there. What questions do the diaspora need to ask for each of your respective experiences in the countries? After our last panel, our first discussion, part 1 of this series, where we were discussing specifically the free trade agreements and what that looks like, having a free trade area across the continent. What would that imply? One of the questions that kept coming up, and I received it at least from four different places, asking, this is really dangerous because they are diasporans, they are living abroad, some in the US, in the UK, in Brazil, who are being presented with projects for investment across the continent. And, it looks great and it's education and we will employ women. I was like, okay, who owns this project? Have you asked who owns this project? This is the first question. But what other questions should people ask when someone comes to them, especially the governments of Africa, when they go to people and tell them, hey, listen, there is this nice flashy thing that you can help and you will bring light into Africa. What questions should people ask themselves? So I'm opening it now for an open dialogue between also. If you have something to add, please do. This is something that weighs very, very heavily on me, and I might get very patient and impassioned. But what questions should people ask? Because are you really helping Africans? Are you really contributing to helping Africans? Or are you contributing to a system and a structure that is continuing to oppress them?
Can I go first?
Please.
Okay. Okay. So I think the question that you just raised is a very pertinent one, especially given the system that within which we continue to define the kind of development that we want. So for example, we have been sold to the narrative that the only way Africa will develop is if we effectively implement privatization, if we effectively implement deregulation, if we effectively implement liberalization. But we haven't been told that in doing all that, we need to be able to do it, that we can't implement these kinds of policies or ideologies from a blanket sense of it. So we need to, because the truth of the matter is that we need to be able to have some kind of regulation. And so for me, one of the things I would like to tell the diasporans is that number one, they need not to forget our culture, because like you rightly put it, within Africa, we have a culture of collective living. So for instance, when you think about the seed sector and the seed system and how we share our seed, how we are able to preserve it and be able to use it in the later seasons, and how, because of colonialism, because of capitalism, and because of the number of white male investors that have dominated our foreign investment for a very long time, have begun to change the ways in which our seed sector operates, to begin to bring in seeds that we would then need to buy, that we cannot share, that we cannot preserve for the next season. And so for me, I think one of the things I would like is for the diasporans to be aware about our culture, to be aware about our history, and to ensure that the kind of investments that they then bring are not extractive, that they are not exploitative, but that they are designed in such a way that they center ideas of egalitarianism, they promote social justice, that they seek to address issues of inequality, because I think that's one of our biggest challenge within the African continent, that there's not just income inequality, but there's also gender inequality, and all different kinds of inequality that have continuously affected, particularly people who already face various forms of oppression, whether it's due to gender or it's due to class, race, whether it's age, ethnic location, etc., etc. And I think for me, that's one of the things that I would like for the diasporans to know. Yeah, I think I'll stop there and I'll add if once the rest have been able to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. Samia, you look ready.
Yes. Before answering your question, I just would like to say one word about Africa.
I can't hear you for some reason. I don't know if it doesn't say muted. Oh.
Let me see. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me now? Well or not very well?
No, I can hear you fine. It was just the interpretation, but no, I can hear you now.
Yes. So what I wanted to say first before answering your question, is that there has always been a wall between North Africa and the other Africa, you know, and that translates in, since my childhood, you know, I used to hear people saying, our football team is going to go and play in Africa. And I say, but we are in Africa, yeah, so why are they saying that? So the perception of people, despite the fact that Tunisia, in the ancient Tunisia, was called Ifriqiya. Did you know that? And the whole continent took its name from Tunisia. Ifriqiya, just before it became Carthage, etc., etc. It was, and so I was, you know, this has been always a handicap for a smooth, fruitful communication between North Africa, and there is a lack of knowledge from both parts. They don't know us, we don't know them. And there is now, you know, I discovered Africa really through my good friend who has a big network in Egypt, Hibak Karama network, doing beautiful work. I say hi to her. She introduced me to SWOR, which is the Solidarity of African Women organizations working on the Maputo Protocol. And when Faiza Osman, who is in charge of equality now in Kenya, asked me, what has Tunisia done about the Maputo Protocol? Why haven't you ratified? I was like, I thought first of all she was talking about Mobutu, the president, and what is Maputo? I was too ashamed and too embarrassed to tell her that I did not know. When I came back to Tunisia, I was so happy that nobody knew either. So I was not the only one who was ignorant. And then I started working. I started going to Kenya, to Ethiopia. I started getting to know, and I can, you know, in Kenya, there is also a very vibrant civil society doing beautiful work, and also in a lot of other countries. So we should not just be always pessimistic about what is happening. People are working. Results are not showing because the problems we have are multiple and they are deeply rooted. Patriarchy is there, harmful practices. Did you know that in Egypt, female genital mutilation, I mean, 80% of women between the age of 14 and 48 or 50, I can't remember, have gone through that. I mean, it's a whole traumatized generation. How do you want women to play a good role while they are full of this trauma, which is a big handicap to their doing what they have to do in a normal way, you know? So what I'm saying that it is time that North Africa and the rest of Africa come together. We have the problem of transport that is also hindering that. You have to go to Europe in order to get to an African country from North Africa most of the time. This is, I just wanted to say that just as something I always wanted to say. But to answer your question is that diaspora who are sometimes urged to come and lured into coming to invest in their countries have to be told the truth. Some of them do come from time to time, but you know, coming on vacation is not like living in the country. But some of them get acquainted with corruption from the airport, you know. But then they probably say this is just the airport, things are they like I said, they lure them into coming and investing, but what they have to ask themselves, are labor laws fair? Is there real rule of law in the country? How do you say that? Are there strong institutions that can guarantee justice? Is there social justice? Are problems of inequality, and I hear faith, being addressed? All these things, they need to know all these things, otherwise they will be shocked when they come, because a lot of these things are not being addressed. I've seen many people come, start an investment, and then run away and leave everything. Some of them, they leave even their money, you know, the little that they started their investment with, and they run away because they found that this is not what they have been promised, etc. So this is what I wanted to say. Thank you. Yeah.
No, thank you. And we will go back to that thing that's you know, the truth that splurred out of your heart that you have been waiting to, because and I present my sister Susan here from Grain, who we've been working on this collaboration and holding these discussions for, because if I can tell you how many emails and tried to contact to Presence North Africa in this conversation, and this is actually the question that we will be moving into, but I do want to see if Madame Fatoumata has something, I am sure, because I can see her nod as we were saying. What are the questions they need to ask themselves?
Donc, toujours pour l'emploi des jeunes au Sénégal, ce qui pose d'énormes problèmes. Il y a toujours l'immigration clandestine, d'où nos enfants meurent dans les grandes eaux comme ça, bien que pour subvenir aux besoins de leur famille. Donc, vous voyez, le gouvernement parle d'embauche, parle de l'emploi des jeunes, mais ça reste toujours un grand problème. En ce qui concerne les projets, les financements des projets ne font qu'endetter les femmes, ne font qu'en détruire les femmes. Elles ne sont pas autonomes, elles sont devenues esclaves, toujours indépendantes, parce que les taux sont très élevés. Donc là, ça pose problème. Au lieu de les aider, on les enfonce en leur donnant des dettes. Donc là, on essaie tout le temps de les sensibiliser, de faire des cotisations entre femmes, des associations, ne serait-ce que cotiser mensuellement et de faire des rotations, des crédits revolving pour être au moins indépendantes d'elles-mêmes. Donc, ce qui nous a beaucoup poussé à encadrer les femmes dans l'agriculture. Mais malheureusement, les terres restent toujours le problème. Parce qu'il y a les étrangers qui viennent imposer, prendre de grandes parcelles, investir, même les enfants, même les enfants de certaines régions ou bien de certains villages n'en bénéficient pas de ces activités. Parce qu'ils amènent leurs employés d'où ils veulent. Au lieu d'employer la main-d'œuvre locale, ils les laissent en rade. Or, ils ont profité des terres de leurs ancêtres, de leurs parents, ce qui appauvrit toujours les populations. Donc, avec ça, il y a une organisation dénommée ASPSP, Association sénégalaise pour la production des semences paysannes, qui lutte matin et soir pour préserver la semence paysanne. Parce que cette semence, celle qui résiste mieux au changement climatique. Parce qu'avec les F1 et consorts là, vraiment, les rendements sont devenus très faibles. Et puis, on n'a pas une bonne santé avec ces pesticides chimiques, déjà qui dégradent les sols, qui rendent toujours malades les populations. Je peux donner une anecdote. Il y a dans un village où j'intervenais, le propriétaire a pulvérisé pour protéger les insectes de ses tomates. Malheureusement, un de ses parents est passé, il a cueilli la tomate qu'on vient de pulvériser. Qu'est-ce qui s'en est suivi? La mort. Donc, vous voyez que les pesticides chimiques dérangent beaucoup, ça amène beaucoup de dégâts. Donc, il faut qu'on lutte par corps et âme pour que nous faisons nos propres pesticides bio, naturels. Là, on a une bonne santé, on dépense moins. Ici, avec les engrais, c'est très cher. Les produits chimiques, c'est dangereux et puis c'est cher. Donc, il faut qu'on lutte ensemble, luttons ensemble pour préserver nos semences paysannes, préparer nos propres pesticides, nos propres fertilisants naturels. C'est ce que je voulais apporter encore de plus.
Yes, truth, Amin, Ashe, Aho, all of the above. Our indigenous seeds and the connection between indigenous seeds and women as guardians of these seeds, as custodians of the seed. And that the attack on our indigenous seed is yet another attack on women. And I echo again what has been said earlier, what Faith said earlier, and what we all know is that patriarchy, misogyny is what made way for racism, for slavery. Because the first attack was on Mother Africa. You want to break a woman, you take away her children, and that is what they did. This is what happened. It is part and parcel of this. So I encourage those of you who have not seen the Seed is Power rally that was co-hosted with the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa and a Growing Culture. It is on our YouTube channel. I will try and find the link and put it in the Zoom. But if you Google Seed is Power or go on YouTube and look at Seed is Power, it was a 5-hour rally packed with power on the connections between seed, our culture, our heritage, our preservation, the role of women, and the policies that keep going around in circles and tiptoe but never really hit what needs to be hit. Speaking of hitting, and we have 10 minutes left for this conversation, but again, the whole idea for this panel, for this series, was to lay the foundation. We want to have a larger conversation. In 2022, again, as I mentioned, EDFU Foundation has ECOSOC status with the UN. We want to be having these conversations with each other on these platforms, not because we are seeking validation or approval or anything from the member states, but because that is a space where we find each other. And we can have these conversations in a space that then these institutions with their big flags and their big logos cannot say, we didn't know that was going on. Yes, you did, it's happening under your flag. It is happening in your space. So if you're not paying attention, that's a different story. If you're ignoring it, that's a different story, but you can no longer say you don't know. So please view this conversation as preliminary. We are looking to shatter these divides, the divide that Samia was just talking about, the North Africa divide. Are North Africans really Africans? Oh no, but wait, they're Arabs. And I say this as someone I grew up in Egypt. I grew up in Egypt and I was raised as an Arab Muslim girl in that order. Even the Islam, it was culturally, it was more Arabized Islam as opposed to the essence of Islam. And this is a lot of the contentions that you will find between North African countries and Tunisia, because they say, oh no, Tunisians aren't they're not doing Islam. They have their own version of Islam because they do this and that and the third, because of some of the laws to do with women. How do we shatter this divide? Why are we looking for investment from the diaspora? Why are we looking for foreign investment and not having this conversation among ourselves first? And when we do say this, we be mindful that the first thing they will say back to us, well, this is why we are looking for a free trade area agreement. what do you say to them? What is your call to action? What do we need to start doing now as African women and as allies of African women who are watching this? We are live on Facebook and on YouTube. So anyone who is watching this, what do we need to do to start fostering these, to go beyond the conversation, beyond the talk, to start building? And I'd like to yield again to Samia, because I was personally part of a network building that Samia was part of with Al Karama organization, Majesté, dearest Hibaq, if you are listening, sending you so much love. But we had a 4-day training that ended up establishing the Arab Regional Women Peace and Security Network. And 3 months later, this thing launched. Why is not something like this an African network of the sort that is centered specifically in development? Samia, I don't know if you're still here. The video went off. There you are. You are muted, Samia. We can't hear you.
Yes, thank you. I said that there were some people going behind me, so I closed the camera to give them space. Yes, so I think that the whole world is going towards coalition building now concept. We know that small organization or even big organizations cannot work on their own anymore. And then it's a lot more useful to come together. Your voices gets louder, the means are bigger, and you will reach more people. So now our organization is part, our NGO is part of many other alliances and networks, and we love it because we feel that we achieve a lot more. This is the first thing. The second thing, like I said, there is a gap. Okay, I was lucky enough to be introduced to the right people who introduced me to the right people in order to unveil that or to rip that veil of misunderstanding or miscommunication or how do you say that? Ignorance. We ignore one another. How the cultures, the way of the mindset, traditions, etc. For example, in Tunisia, we don't have harmful practices. We have harmful practices, of course, harmful behaviors, but we do not have harmful practices as such, like like the FGM. I first heard of it when I was like 25 or 26, and then I thought it was only in present and within disadvantaged categories of society. And I was shocked when I found out that in Egypt, both Coptic, Muslims, etc., they say it's a pharaonic tradition. We don't know where it came, but it is still widespread. I mean, it's unbelievable that now women who are judges, pilots, in the security, in all the jobs, they still have to go through that. I said that before. But what I want to say, how can we overcome this gap? I think more working together. It's the only way, getting into alliances, into networks. How can we do that practically? I mean, how can we push? I haven't thought of that as such. Like I said, I was lucky to be introduced to all these dynamic organizations and alliances. And now I feel like, in Arabic we say, like a fish in the sea. So in the water, like a fish in the water. So I'm in my element and I feel African. We have a big problem of identity in North Africa, like Dima has explained at the beginning. For example, the Egyptians now say we are at the certain in the 80s, 70s, 60s, etc. Muslims, etc. Now they are pharaohs. They are very proud to say we are, you know, our descendants are. In Tunisia, after the revolution, this problem was put out to public debate, and it slowed us down so much because it is loaded with discrimination, with the differences, etc. So now in Tunisia, some people feel they are more Mediterranean, you know, as others more Arabic and Muslims, and other very few feel they are African, to tell you the truth. I think it's time that North Africa embraces its Africanity. I know this is maybe a poetic word, but we have to start by how do you say it, getting to know each other more and better.
Amin. Yes, please. So much to say to that, but I am mindful of time. And again, I want to thank our interpreters who are here with us and sharing, helping us communicate this in the different languages. I yield to Madame Fatoumata to tell us, how do we move forward with based on your experience? What would your call to action be to African women?
Les femmes africaines, on peut dire que l'union fait la force. Il faut qu'on s'organise en créant des réseaux pour les femmes. Moi, j'ai eu la chance d'être membre dans un réseau de 21 groupements de femmes. Nous gérons nos fonds propres. On ne prend pas de crédit ni dans les projets. Nous cotisons chaque mois. Donc, on est arrivé de financer 3 groupements par mois. Donc, là, je pense que c'est une bonne chose. Il faut essayer de démultiplier ces activités-là. Comme ça, nous serons toujours pour être indépendants. Moi, j'aime l'indépendance. On dit l'indépendance, ça sonne à l'oreille comme ça. Mais c'est nous qui créons notre propre indépendance. Donc, il faut bannir les prêts, les projets, prendre des prêts dans les projets. Ça nous endette tout le temps, on s'enfonce. Donc, gérons nos propres fonds, avec nos moyens revenus. Faisons qu'elles se développent et nous serons toujours indépendantes. Je pense qu'à l'avenir, on essaie d'aller de l'avant. OK.
Amin, yes. Thank you. Unity. We are, again, the echoing, we connect the dots. The more we speak to one another, we realize not only our experience is the same, but the reasons for our success also start to become apparent. And Samia said it was because she was connected to other networks and she was connected to other people who connected her to other people. And it emphasizes back to what Faith was saying, to know our culture. Our culture is embedded in collective living, collective growth, collective justice. So Faith, there was a question in the chat, but also I know there's plenty for you to say as how do we break that divide? How do we shatter these barriers? Please.
Okay, thank you. And I like what Fatoumata said, and I will say it in different words. We need to decolonize ourselves. We need to, and I'll say we need to decolonize our investments. I would like to draw from a quote that Audre Lorde once said. She was a Black feminist. And one of the things that she said was, the master's tool will never dismantle the master's house. And so one of the things I would like to emphasize is the fact that I think now more than ever, we need African diasporans, African women to begin to prioritize investment back home, because we need to decolonize our investments. And to try and respond to the question that that Susan put for me in the chat, is to say that one of the reasons why we need to decolonize our investments is because foreign investments at the moment have basically been designed to rely on investment treaties. So investment treaties that are designed to protect foreign investors, to protect them even from laws and policies that are designed by our governments to protect us, laws that have been designed for our own interests. So they have a number of provisions. For instance, prohibition of indirect expropriation, where they basically allow for a foreign investor to sue our government if they feel that their rights to maximize profits are being violated by perhaps a law. It could be an environmental law. It could be a law that is trying to increase minimum wage. It could be any kind of legal framework that has been designed to protect our interests as citizens. The other concern is the fact that they are gender blind. And a lot of the times we say they are gender neutral, but they are not gender neutral. They are actually blind to gender issues and all the dynamics and systems of oppression against women and other minoritized groups. But also they, in certain instances, for example, the United States bilateral investment treaties even go ahead to prohibit performance requirement measures, in the sense that our governments cannot require a foreign investor to, for example, procure locally, to employ a certain number of locals. And we know how this was very important when it came to Black empowerment within South Africa after apartheid. They even go ahead to challenge issues to do with our ability to access medicines, because they provide for extensive protection of intellectual property rights. And the list goes on and on. And so this is why it's important for us to begin to prioritize investing back home, because I know there are a lot of diasporans out there who do not have citizenship, and so they cannot be able to benefit from bilateral investment treaties that have been signed between the countries with which they are currently living and where they would have wanted to and back home where they would have wanted to invest. And so I think it's important to prioritize it and to recognize that because many of the master's tools valorize almost exclusively individualistic and social cognitive approaches, because they ignore the foundational roots of structural and intersectional inequality, because they center white, Western, male, and middle-class people, and their experiences are normative, because they prioritize mere improvement and not transformation, because they view women and Black people and other minoritized groups primarily through the lens of deficit. We cannot rely on the master's tools to be able to deliver the kind of social justice that we need. And so that is why we need to decolonize ourselves. Thank you very much.
That is what they call a mic drop after this series of conversation, of points. This is a lot to digest, but very important to take in, to sit with. Again, we will be continuing this conversation. I have put my email in the chat box. The hope is, for those of you who don't know, the UN has voted on the passing of the first permanent forum for people of African descent after a lot of pushing back and forth. EDFU Foundation has been one of the organizations on the steering committee to call for this space. We need to be taking this conversation there. We need to also be having it at the Commission for the Status of Women in March, and at the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. These are all connected. I am so, so grateful to each and every one of you. Samia has brought out so much of my conflict as an African whose identity has been robbed of her, growing up as an Arab and not even knowing or understanding or even owning my language, my Nubian language, which is banned in both Egypt and Sudan. We have so much more to discuss. I'm so grateful to all our audience. I am so, so grateful to our translators, to our partners, and I am most grateful to each one of you queens for bringing your light, your wisdom, your success, and your hope and determination for us to continue rising. I thank you all, and we continue this conversation onwards to victory.
Thank you, Dima. So nice to reconnect.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me.
Thank you.